Hello and good day. Would you like to have more success and fun in lab? I taught biology lab class for 38 years. Loved it. Never got tired of it. And how could that be? I'm like you, highly trained, successful in biology, but they assigned me to teach a non-major lab class. Lucky for me, there were really good and experienced teachers where I was hired in 1969. Most professors at that time were traditional in approach, but this group at my college was able to work with modern techniques without losing the time-tested success of traditional methods. I learned many golden lessons along the way, and today I offer 5 ways that you can change your biology lab class. How do you want your lab to be different next year than it is this year? How do you want students to be different next year? If you wanted your lab to be different this year than last year, and it isn't, what do you blame? And if your class isn't different next year, what will you blame? I have an answer to this problem. I was partly taught and partly learned on my own. It's your habits. If you want your lab to be different next year, change your habits. What are the habits of your students? If you want your students to change next year, change their habits. Your habits are your future. Your lab class will change when your habits change. If you tell me your habits, I can tell you what your lab class will be like. When students come into our class, we tell them about habits. Habits of being on time, habits of listening, habits of studying, because we know as absolute fact that their habits will create academic success. Our lab class will change when our habits change. Change your habits. The second way you can change your lab class, change your grading. There are many ways to grade. The arguments about which is best have gone on forever. Forget about fancy analysis. Remember the single most important truth about grades, the conclusion that common sense made long ago. How you grade will decide what your students do. If you have weekly quizzes that require the student to review certain information already printed in the lab book, then why would you expect them to be greatly concerned with what goes on during lab? Much more important for them to pay attention to the attractive person at the next table. They know enough to be polite to you, and that's good. But you know, none of them are biology majors, and they just want at least a C grade. And that's reasonable. Why are you expecting more if your grading doesn't expect more? Weekly quizzes are not the villain in these matters. They can be the hero. That's another discussion at another time. If you want students to complete the lab exercises, then the grade must be on that. Whatever counter arguments you have, your students agree with me. Remember, you are the one who wants to change your lab class. Change your grading, and your lab class will change. So we have 2 helpful lessons so far. Change your habits, change your grading. A third way you can change your lab class is to ask the right questions. What are your questions? Do your students know your questions? Have you thought about how and why before you ask questions? Can you take a question from another person and change it into a question that you think would be more helpful to them? Can you do this without shaming them? Can you add a question that makes all of the other questions have more meaning? Often we ask the wrong questions. The wise person tells us that wrong questions lead to wrong decisions, and wrong decisions lead to wrong habits that end in misery. A little heavy for biology lab, but there is a truth. Ask the right questions and you will change your lab. Questions don't have to be big questions to be good questions. Some questions may be big and powerful in a political setting, but phony and forced in a non-major lab class. Don't succumb to the popular notion of introducing the most complex questions to the most introductory group with the expectation of some grand transformation. Remember, the strength of temptation is neither a measure of truth nor goodness. Ask the right questions. Sometimes the simplest question, presented with great enthusiasm, is the right question. Maybe just a simple question like, is there a nucleus in this cell? If you believe it is an important question and you test on it, your students will believe it too. Have the habit of asking the right questions and grade your students on these questions, and your lab class will change next year. The fourth way you can change your lab class is to simplify. Simplify. Do more with less, not less with more. What are you chasing? Some standard on the internet where someone is pretending to be doing postgraduate experiments in their introductory non-majors class? Complexity is not what your students need. They never will get enough of something they don't need. And neither will you. Your students need you. They need your time, your attention, your enthusiasm, not a lab filled with activities beyond their abilities. We fool no one with complexity. We just miss opportunity with it. Simplify. So let's summarize so far. If you want your lab class to be different next year than it is this year, change your habits, change your grading, ask the right questions, and simplify. The fifth way you can change your lab class is to change the lab book. A lab book should not stand in the way of your success. It should clear the way for your enthusiasm and talents. A lab book should help you change your habits, change your grading, ask the right questions, and help you to simplify. Thank you and good day.